I noted today, first of all, on Twitter, that the Mail Online, one of the most read news sites on the planet, had twice as many stories on its pages on Labour's alleged anti-Semitism problems than it did on the Conservative Party's decision to suspend 14 activists over alleged Islamophobic views. Apparently, scores of Tory members were part of an Islamophobic Facebook group, and you'd have thought that such a serious breaking news story from the party in government, well, you'd have thought that would dominate the news agenda, but it doesn't seem so. Hope Not Hate, the campaign group, reckon the party is in denial about anti-Islamic feeling amongst its members, and it noted the former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson comparing a woman in a niqab to bank robbers and letterboxes. The Tory MP Michael Fabricant posted a cartoon showing Sadiq Khan's head on an inflatable balloon engaged in a sex act with a pig. Gosh, what is going on with the Conservatives? Is the party becoming institutionally racist? As my next guest, the Tory peer Baroness Sayeeda Warsi, was telling the Huffington Post earlier. She joins us on the line now. Good afternoon, Sayeeda.
Good afternoon, Matthew.
I've been following your tweets for a while, and your exasperation is tangible. I will tell you that for nothing, Sayeeda. I guess that most recently, yesterday, you were on your party chair, Brandon Lewis's case, and I got the feeling that you don't feel he's on top of the situation.
He's not, and the party's not been on top of it for years, Matthew. I mean, the reason why I'm so disheartened, I mean, this has been soul-destroying for me. I've spent years and years saying to the party privately, I mean, long before actually the vile stuff we've seen in the Labour Party on anti-Semitism even came to light, I'd picked up this sense of anti-Islamic, Islamophobic sentiment comments from our members of Parliament, some of our linked groups. And I said to the party, we just need to deal with this. And neither were we didn't deal with the individual cases, nor did we look at this as being, a part of a broader issue. And really kind of 2.5 years into raising these matters privately, I felt that I had no option but to go public with this. But the hardest thing, Matthew, is to fight and battle your own.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we shouldn't have got to this stage where this is now being played out, effectively trial by Twitter, because the party will, have refused to deal with it privately.
So, I mean, if he's not on top of it, should he go, Brandon Lewis? Should he resign?
I'm less interested in who goes and who stays. I'm more interested in the party dealing with this issue. Why? Because, what prompted me as a working class British Muslim from Yorkshire to join the Conservative Party, it was this real view that if you worked hard and you played by the rules, that there was a place for everybody in this country, and that was the kind of society we wanted to create. And I cannot now, hand on heart, go and speak to young British Muslims and say to them that this is the party for you, that you will have equal worth and equal value here, and if you do raise concerns about other members or colleagues or people in your association making vile comments, treating you in this way, that the party will take it seriously. And that breaks my heart, because as a centre-right politician, Matthew, I fundamentally believe we have the answers to some of the big issues of our time, but yet I don't see my party wanting to be part of this modern Britain.
I mean, I have to say, Nicky Morgan, I've met her a few times, and she's gone on record as saying she doesn't recognise, she says, I absolutely do not recognise it. This is the claim that the Tory party has a problem with Islam, and yet the newspapers are reporting that on one of these Facebook groups, which appeared to be a support group for Jacob Rees-Mogg, a sort of unofficial support group, a third of the posts related to people saying they couldn't vote for Sajid Javid as a potential Prime Minister because it would lead to Islam running the country. I mean, if that doesn't show that the Tory party, or at least some Tory members, because this is something else I think we have to wrestle with, isn't it, Sayeeda? How do we know that the people that post this stuff are indeed members of the Tory party, just as it seems that some of the people posting anti-Semitic stuff on Labour sites may well have actually been Labour members either? You could be dealing with bots or troublemakers.
And that's why we need an independent inquiry. Matthew, I'm a lawyer. I don't think you just make, people aren't just guilty because somebody makes an allegation. Yeah. You need to have a process. You need to have an independent inquiry. You need to have a place where people think that they can whistle blow about what's going on in the party, and the comfort that there won't be any blowback. I've spoken to people who are scared to speak out. They think it will damage their political career, that there will be black marks put against their file, that they won't be selected in the future. We need to have a space, a trusting space, where people can come forward and say, this is the way I've been treated, these are the people who've done it. And also, I mean, we have a membership list, so we can check and we can go back and verify. Some of these people are saying they are members and are posting their membership cards online, so it's not hard to put that evidence together. But more than that, we have members of parliament who are retweeting the likes of Tommy Robinson and think that's okay to do. You know, repeating Islamophobic tropes, you know, hosting Islamophobes in the Houses of Parliament. We saw the mayoral election, 2016 mayoral election, which was terrible in the way in which that Zach could have gone after Sadiq Khan for a whole series of policy issues. Instead, he chose to go after him and suggest that he was a dangerous individual. There was something radical about him. He couldn't be trusted to be mayor of London. And, you know, that is unacceptable. That should have been a career-ending moment for Zach. We re-elected him as Member of Parliament.
Well, I was going to say, what about the sanctions as they stand? You have had, as far as I know, Tory members who've been suspended over allegations of Islamophobia and then subsequently reinstated.
Yeah, and this is the opaqueness of the issue, Matthew. There's no sense of what happened. There's no sense of what the process is. There's no publication or transparency on the outcomes. There's no detail on how long those people are then expelled for. There's no process on how they're brought back. So if we take the case of Peter Lamb, the individual who's finally left the party yesterday, he wasn't even expelled. He left of his own accord. I
suspect if it wasn't for your tweets, he wouldn't have left at all, actually, Sayeeda, if I'm honest.
And that's the problem, Matthew, that the party has only acted on cases when there has been a public kind of very awful spat about this. You know, it's, like I said, it's, it's trial by Twitter, and it shouldn't be like that. You know, the party should want to root out these people themselves rather than be shamed into rooting them out because they're brought to the table kicking and screaming by social networks.
Here's Kevin for you.
Baroness, as we know, these offending comments were posted on a pro-Jacob Rees-Mogg Facebook group. No one is accusing him of being Islamophobic, but some of his followers clearly are. Do you equate this with a general racism problem that may have inspired the more right-wing elements of the Tory party to vote for Brexit?
I think there are two parts to this. So there was the report that you mentioned, Matthew, right at the beginning, the Hope Not Hate report. When they polled people who said they were Tory voters, 48% of them said Islam is not compatible with Britain and British way of life. 47% said they believe there were no-go zones in Britain where only Sharia law was practiced. I mean, the kind of bizarre conspiracy theories and views that large numbers, nearly 50% of people who said voted Conservative had these views should disturb us. We are clearly attracting a certain kind of voter, a certain kind of member now. There's lots of kind of ex-UKIPers, angry Brexiteers. There's a whole group of people who now feel they can effectively infiltrate the party, elect the next leader, because this particular Jacob Rees-Mogg Facebook supporters group was all about saying we've become members because we're going to elect the next leader. And one of the conversations they were having on that was about how they must stop Sajid Javid, who is the equivalent of a Trojan horse within the Tory party, that he's some sort of political jihadist. And all of that stuff was being discussed on these groups by people who were saying, we are members and we want to take this party down this direction.
OK, now, you said just a minute or two ago that it feels sometimes like action is only taken when there's a degree of public fuss. Are you disheartened at all by the media coverage of this issue, Islamophobia within the Tory rank and file? As I pointed out, the Mail Online today carries twice as many stories about Labour's problems with anti-Semitism, which you could argue is a longer, more ongoing story than a news story involving the party and government.
I mean, I don't like to draw comparisons, Matthew.
Well, I wondered if there's a hint of Islamophobia perhaps in the press coverage, that they're not actually grabbing at this story, because it's important.
I mean, look, there was a Home Affairs Select Committee inquiry which basically said that certain newspapers, certain parts of our, predominantly tabloid press were going out and feeding the beast, as I call it. They were going out and deliberately finding stories which subsequently turned out to be incorrect, untrue, and then the apologies were so small, but the damage had been done in kind of feeding this anti-Islamic sentiment within the country. I mean, the Times front pages have been found to be incorrect and subsequently had to be withdrawn. So there's lots of ways in which the media, I think, have been part of the problem in creating this climate. I always say that if political leadership and media leadership green lights bigotry, then why are we surprised that we see it on our streets? And that's why, as politicians and as people in the media, we have a responsibility to be accurate in our reporting. Nobody's asking for favourable treatment. I mean, I remember when I was asked at the Home Affairs Select Committee evidence session, would you like the papers to run more positive Muslim stories? And I said, well, I'd just be grateful if they could run accurate Muslim stories. I'm not really bothered about them being positive.
Okay, so let's, I mean, you paint a pretty grim picture, I have to say. You paint a pretty grim picture. If we're not bothered or we don't feel that changing the party chair is the way forward, that Brandon Lewis, whether he's on top of the situation or not, that we don't think there's going to be any advantage gained from removing him. The inquiry, I mean, is there any support for that? I mean, is that likely to happen? What about some leadership from Theresa May on the issue?
I'm not going to hold my breath in, expecting the Prime Minister to show some leadership on this. I think she's probably got bigger issues on which I'd like her to show some leadership right now. But, there is now support. So people like Anna Soubry, Heidi Allen, a number of colleagues, including an ex-cabinet minister, has called me this morning and said that they're going to be speaking to the party about this as well. Great. So I think there is an acknowledgement that, because up to now, it's really felt like a 3-year lonely battle. And even when colleagues have privately said, I know this is an issue, they haven't been prepared to speak about it publicly. And I think my appeal now to my colleagues is, when you deny this problem, you are part of the problem. I'm sure there are individual members of Parliament in Labour who have never experienced any form of anti-Semitism within their constituency. For them to then superimpose that on the whole of the Labour Party and say, and therefore I am of the view that there is no such thing as anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, we would be horrified. And that's why I'm, really disappointed with colleagues who say, well, because I haven't seen it. I mean, I have a lot of time for Nicky Morgan. You mentioned her in your introduction. But with all due respect, Nicky Morgan's experience of experiencing Islamophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment is probably going to be slightly different to my experience of experiencing Islamophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment. And if she can't understand that and she can't acknowledge when we have this huge amount of evidence which clearly shows that there is a problem, denial is part of the problem. So my party and my colleagues have to stop denying, have to grow the moral courage to be able to say this is an issue and to start an independent inquiry, because otherwise we are slowly becoming a party, which the Runnymede Trust report last week showed that is not a welcome place for Black, Asian and minority ethnic people. I mean, that report last week showed that the Labour Party are picking up 77% of the BAME vote. I mean, that should horrify us. The fact that 77% of the Black, Asian, minority ethnic electorate is voting Labour should keep Brandon Lewis awake at night. And if for no other reason, if he can't find the moral courage to do this, Matthew, then let's hope he can find the political courage to think, actually, this is in our interest to sort this out.
Here. Baroness Sayeeda Warsi, I was hanging on your every word. I wish you all the best with your ongoing struggle, and I would heartily recommend that anybody who's interested in fighting racism within any political party, well worth following Sayeeda Warsi on Twitter.